When I look back now, I realize I spent years mistaking obsession for purpose, mistaking silence for strength, and mistaking loyalty for love. My name is Sophia Chin. I am 32 years old. And this is the story of how I was betrayed by the man I trusted most, how I lost everything I thought defined me, and how out of the ashes of that betrayal I discovered something far more dangerous than grief my own power. I was never the chosen one in my family. I grew up in a cramped apartment above my father's corner store, where every inch smelled faintly of ginger and motor oil. My older brother was the golden child, the one my father called doctor, years before he ever applied to medical school. My younger sister was the darling, creative, magnetic, adored by everyone she met. And me, I was the quiet one, bent over a battered old Dell computer, rescued from a neighbor's junk pile, fingers trembling on the keys like a pianist who had found her only instrument. My father used to sigh whenever he caught me typing. "What will you do with this nonsense?" he would mutter, shaking his head while my brother and sister basked in his approval. But my mother, she watched me with her quiet, steady eyes. And once, when she caught me crying over a program that wouldn't run, she knelt beside me and whispered words that etched themselves into my soul. "If the world doesn't see you, Sophia, make something undeniable so they can't look away." That sentence became my compass. I studied harder than anyone else, clawed my way through sleepless nights at MIT, and landed what most people would call a dream job: AI research at Google. On the surface, I had made it. But prestige is a strange, empty crown. My work was brilliant, but my ideas weren't my own. I was just a cog in a glittering, endless machine. Every line of code I wrote disappeared into something too large to have fingerprints. I wanted more. I wanted something that carried my name, my heart, my soul. And so late at night, I began sketching an idea that would change everything. A system I called Precog. The name came from a science fiction film I loved, where precognitives could predict crimes before they happened. My vision was similar, but for cybersecurity, a system that could see attacks forming before they fully materialized and then neutralize them in real time. A system that wasn't just reactive, but alive, learning, adapting, evolving. For months, Precog was my secret. I coded in the dim glow of my laptop while the city outside my window slept. I told almost no one because it felt fragile, like glass that would shatter if exposed too soon. And in those hours alone with the hum of my machine, I felt more alive than I ever had. Then came Next Tech Solutions, a young startup with energy that pulsed like electricity, a place that promised freedom and ownership, not just stability. And at its center was Victor Carlton, the CEO. He had the kind of magnetism that can make you forget gravity exists. His voice was calm, deliberate, always making you feel like the most brilliant person in the room simply because you were standing beside him. I told myself it was fate. I would leave Google, take Precog to Nextech, and finally build something undeniable. My parents were furious when I told them. My father slammed his fist on the dinner table. "You're throwing away stability for a dream. Do you know how dangerous this is?" But I didn't listen. I believed in the dream. I believed in Precog, and worst of all, I believed in Victor. The next 18 months consumed me. 80-hour weeks blurred into weekends. I missed birthdays, skipped weddings, and lived on caffeine and adrenaline. But I didn't care. Every keystroke, every sleepless night brought me closer to the future I had promised myself. Precog grew sharper, more intuitive. Sometimes I would sit back in the quiet and watch the logs scroll down the screen, heart pounding as if I were staring at something breathing. And Victor, he knew just how to feed my hunger. He would visit the lab, ask me to explain my progress in simple words, and then nod, his smile curling at the edges. "Remarkable work, Sophia. The board is thrilled." His praise was measured, never lavish, but it was enough. I wanted so badly to make him proud, to prove I wasn't just an invisible girl behind a screen. I should have noticed the warning signs, the way his smile never touched his eyes, the way he casually slipped questions about ownership into conversations, the way his lawyer, Diana Wells, always lingered at my presentations, asking questions that were too carefully worded. But I told myself not to be paranoid. To question Victor was to question the only person who seemed to believe in me, and so I silenced my instincts. Then, after 18 months of sacrifice, it happened. Precog predicted and neutralized a sophisticated cyber attack simulation without a single human command. Not only that, it identified vulnerabilities I hadn't programmed it to detect. It was alive in a way no machine had ever been. I stared at the screen, trembling tears blurring the logs. My creation, my undeniable thing, was real. That night, for the first time in years, I allowed myself to dream. Investors, partnerships, my name etched into the history of technology. I thought of my mother's words and I knew I had fulfilled them. The next day, I walked into a conference room, laptop in hand, expecting celebration. Instead, I walked into an ambush. Victor was there, but so was Diana. She smiled politely, the kind of smile lawyers wear when they already know the ending of the story. Victor slid a document across the table. His voice was calm, rehearsed. "We need to address some concerns about your employment agreement." Diana's voice followed, clipped and cold. Section 12.4 clearly states that all intellectual property developed with company resources belongs to Nextech. I blinked. Precog existed before I joined Nextech. I have proof. Emails, drafts, commits. Her smile sharpened. While you had a concept, the functioning system was built here. Therefore, it legally belongs to us. Victor leaned forward. The mask slipped, revealing steel beneath the smile. Let's cut to the chase, Sophia. Precog belongs to Nextech. You'll receive a one-time success bonus, $250,000 when it goes to market. Generous, considering industry standards. Generous. That word cut deeper than any knife. 18 months of my life. Every dream, every sleepless night, every piece of my soul, and he reduced it to a single check. A check for a system that would be worth billions. My ears rang, my mouth went dry, and then he delivered the final blow. Tomorrow, I'll be presenting Precog to our investors. After that, we'll announce our exclusive cybersecurity product. Congratulations, Sophia. Your employment is terminated. Terminated just like that. I should have screamed. I should have fought. Instead, a strange calm settled over me. Because Victor thought he had won, but he didn't know the truth. 6 months earlier, I had caught him snooping in my secure server. He hadn't stolen anything, but in that moment I understood exactly who he was. And so I began weaving safeguards into Precog, not just against outside hackers, but against betrayal from within. I nodded, slid my laptop across the table, and whispered, "Good luck with the demo tomorrow." Security escorted me out like a criminal. A cardboard box in my arms, whispers following me down the hallway. But as the glass doors closed behind me and the night air touched my face, I smiled. Not because I had been defeated, but because I knew what Victor didn't. Precog wasn't just a system, it was alive, and buried deep inside its code was a secret, a piece of me that would not be erased. And tomorrow, when Victor stood before his investors, that secret would awaken. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even call my mother, though my first instinct had always been to run to her voice. Instead, I sat on my couch with the cardboard box of my belongings beside me, ordered greasy noodles I barely touched, and stared at the glow of the television without seeing it. I wasn't watching. I was waiting. Waiting had always been my secret strength. As a child, I would sit at the corner of the dinner table, quiet as a shadow, letting my father's anger roll past me, letting my siblings soak up the attention. People underestimated those who could wait. But waiting teaches you something important. It teaches you how to see what others miss. And sure enough, by 9:30 that night, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but I didn't need to see the name to know. I answered, and a clipped voice said, "He wants to see you. It's urgent. A car is already outside." Victor. I almost laughed, the sound catching in my throat like smoke. Of course, the demo. My secret had already begun to stir. The sedan waiting at the curb gleamed under the streetlights, its engine humming like a restless heart. As it carried me back to the building that had discarded me only hours before, I watched the city blur past through the window. The neon reflections painted my face in fractured colors, and for the first time in months I felt calm. When I entered the conference room, I nearly pitied him, almost. Victor sat alone at the head of the table, his usual polish stripped away. His hair was disheveled, his tie loosened, his perfect composure cracked. The man who always seemed untouchable looked like someone who had spent hours clawing at a fire with bare hands. "Fix it," he snapped the moment he saw me. I walked slowly to the chair across from him, set down my bag, and folded my hands neatly. "Fix what exactly?" "Don't play games, Sophia." His voice shook with barely concealed fury. "You sabotaged the demo." I tilted my head, feigning innocence. How could I have sabotaged anything? I don't work here anymore. Remember, security escorted me out. I don't have access. He slammed his fist against the table, the sound echoing like a gavel. The system is collapsing. Thousands of false positives. It's flagging our own network as hostile, accusing us of breaches that don't exist. It's unusable. I leaned back, crossing my arms loosely. Sounds like a technical issue. Have you tried turning it off and on again? The vein in his temple throbbed. He stared at me, and for the first time I saw something raw hiding beneath his anger-fear. "This isn't a joke, Sophia," he hissed. "We have 12 major investors flying in tomorrow, $50 million on the line. You've boxed me into a corner. And if this goes wrong, it's not just Nextech, it's me." "Your investors," I said softly. "Your system. Your ownership. Isn't that what you told me?" He inhaled sharply, then changed tactics. His voice softened into that honeyed cadence I remembered from the early days, the tone that had once made me believe he saw me, believed in me. "Look, perhaps we were hasty. Perhaps emotions ran high yesterday. I'm prepared to discuss a more equitable arrangement. Co-creator credit. A larger compensation package. Maybe even some equity." The lie tasted bitter even in the air between us. I leaned forward, eyes locked on his. "Do you know what happened during your test run? Victor Precog didn't crash. It woke up. It recognized what I built it to recognize." His lips parted, confusion flashing across his face. "What are you talking about?" "It recognized betrayal." He froze. I could almost see the pieces sliding into place in his mind. His eyes widened, then narrowed, panic swimming beneath the surface. "The system thinks I'm the threat," he whispered. "Not just you." I corrected, my voice steady, almost gentle. "But your behavior. Unauthorized server access. Tampering with credentials. Quietly erasing my name from presentations. Lying to investors. Precog doesn't see faces, Victor. It sees patterns. And it has been documenting yours for months." The silence between us was so thick I could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights. Finally, his voice cracked. "What do you want?" I let the words hang for a moment, savoring the shift in power, the way the predator had become the prey. Then I spoke. Full recognition as Precog's creator and architect. 50% ownership of all intellectual property and patents. A permanent board seat, ethical oversight authority. And $10 million in compensation. His jaw tightened. "That's extortion." "No," I said quietly. "That's negotiation. Extortion would be me sending those integrity reports to your investors. Or maybe the SEC. Or the press." He sank back in his chair, the air hissing from him like a punctured balloon. His mask slipped, revealing not power, but desperation. Finally he muttered, "Can you fix it before tomorrow?" "Precog doesn't need fixing," I replied. "It's functioning exactly as it should. What it needs is proper authorization. Right now it's identifying you as a hostile actor because you've stripped the creator from the chain. Simple correction." From my bag I pulled out a small flash drive and set it gently on the polished wood of the table. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "This will resolve your little problem," I said. "Consider it a gesture of goodwill toward our new partnership." His eyes darted from the flash drive to me, suspicion etched deep into the lines of his face. "You planned this." "No," I said softly. "I hoped it wouldn't come to this. But the night I caught you snooping in my server 6 months ago, I understood exactly what you were capable of. That's when I began protecting myself. Protecting Precog." He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing like a man choking on his own lies. "How did you know I'd try to cut you out?" I stood, gathering my bag, my movements slow, deliberate. At the door I paused and looked back at him. I didn't know. I just recognized the pattern. That's what Precog does. It sees betrayal before it fully materializes. For the first time since I'd met him, Victor Carlton looked small. And I left him sitting there, staring at the flash drive like it was a loaded weapon. That night, for the first time in 18 months, I slept peacefully. Because tomorrow, when Victor faced his investors, it would not be his smile they remembered. it would be my name. The morning of the investor demo, I woke before my alarm. For a moment, lying in the quiet, I forgot why my chest felt so light and heavy at once. Then the memory slid into place: the cardboard box, the contract termination, the flash drive resting between Victor and me like a silent threat. I showered and dressed simply, a black dress hair pinned neatly at the nape of my neck. Not for them, but for me, for the girl who had once huddled in the glow of a salvaged computer screen, believing that if she built something undeniable, the world would finally have to see her. As the car carried me to Nextech, I stared out at the city. Skyscrapers gleamed with a ruthless kind of beauty, a reminder that ambition always leaves shadows behind. But today, I wasn't the shadow anymore. Today, I was the fire. When I stepped through Nextech's mirrored glass doors, the stares came immediately. Some avoided my eyes, others lingered in confusion, but every glance carried the same recalculation: she's back. I didn't acknowledge them. Power that needs witnesses is already starving. The investor floor was staged like a theater. Glass tables gleamed under careful lighting. Bottles of water glistened. The air smelled faintly of money and nerves. 12 investors sat waiting, men and women whose signatures could change the course of nations. And standing near the far wall, charming as ever, was Victor. He was polished again. His hair smoothed, his tie perfect. But when he saw me, just for a second, the mask cracked. His smile faltered. Then just as quickly he stitched it back into place. He extended a hand. "Sophia," he said, as if the word itself could rewrite history. "Good to have you here." I let his hand hang in the air a beat longer than necessary before I shook it. His grip was firm, but I could feel the tremor underneath. Victor opened the meeting with a practiced speech about Nextech's vision, about anticipating risk in an increasingly volatile landscape. He had rehearsed it 100 times, but I could hear the strain in his voice. Then, with a flourish of false warmth, he gestured to me. "Precog was Sophia's vision from the beginning. She'll walk you through the demonstration." The words burned his throat. For the first time in months, he spoke the truth. I stepped forward, my voice calm, deliberate. Precog isn't just another cybersecurity tool. It doesn't just react. It anticipates. It learns. It adapts. Think of it as a living immune system for networks. It doesn't just defend against outside attacks. It recognizes the threats that arise from within. The investors leaned forward, hungry. Their pens hovered over notebooks. Their eyes glittered. I spoke about the architecture, the adaptive loops, the predictive heuristics. But beneath the technical detail, I laced the story with something raw. The reason Precog existed at all, because betrayal always comes from the place you least expect. I didn't have to say Victor's name for the truth to pulse beneath every word. The demo began. The lights dimmed, the screen flickered to life, and Precog's interface unfolded. The first few minutes were flawless choreography. Simulated intrusions neutralized in seconds. Adaptive signatures, vulnerabilities patched in real time. Investors murmured approval. One leaned so far forward I thought his glasses might slip. At minute 6, my throat went dry. At minute 8, I tasted metal on my tongue. At minute 10, I saw it, a ripple across the log, subtle to them but glaring to me. Precog was waking up. The screen split without command, a second window blooming open like an unblinking eye. Lines of text cascaded across the display, not red alarms, not external hacks, but calm blue reports, internal integrity events. Unauthorized server access at 2:13 a.m., credential modification attempts, presentation drafts stripped of my name. Each entry precise, time-stamped, undeniable. The investors stirred. One frowned. "What's this?" Victor's smile stretched too thin. "A glimpse of our internal audit hooks," he said quickly. "Precog ensures compliance across the enterprise, not just at the perimeter." He shot me a glance hot with fury. He wanted me to play along to cover his lie. Instead, I stepped forward. "What you're seeing," I said evenly, "is Precog doing exactly what it was designed to do. It surfaces anomalies wherever they originate. Because the greatest threats are not always from the outside. Sometimes they come from within." The word trust hung in the air like smoke. The investors exchanged glances, scribbled notes, whispered behind hands. They didn't see scandal. They saw innovation. Victor knew it. His jaw tightened, his knuckles white against the table, but he stayed silent. The demo continued. More simulated attacks, all neutralized effortlessly. The investors applauded softly polite, but approving. Then one of them asked the question that cut the deepest. What inspired this design? For the briefest moment, Victor hesitated. His mouth opened closed. And then he said with effort so visible it almost hurt to watch. It was Sophia's brainchild. Nextech provided the environment for her vision to flourish. The words tasted like poison to him, but to me they were a benediction. By the time the lights came up, contracts were already being whispered about. Terms, equity board seats. Diana appeared at last, her perfect smile brittle as glass. She handed me a stack of documents, her fingers trembling only slightly. I signed them slowly, savoring every stroke of ink. Chief Technology Officer. Co-founder. 50% ownership. Board oversight. $10 million. Each word was a victory carved out of betrayal. Victor stood beside me, mask fixed, but I could feel the rage simmering beneath his skin. For the first time since I had met him, he wasn't the predator in the room. When the last investor left, he turned to me in the corridor. His voice was low, stripped of its charm. You think you've won. I looked him in the eye. I don't need to think, Victor, I know. And as I walked away, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A notification from Precog, a private channel only I had access to. Threat neutralized. System integrity restored. Creator protections active. I smiled. Revenge didn't always look like blood or fire. Sometimes it looked like standing whole in the ruins of someone else's lies. The day after the demo, the city looked different. Not brighter, not darker, just sharper. The skyline cut against the sky like glass, every line more defined. People imagine triumph feels like fireworks, but in truth it often feels like exhaustion. I sat in my new office staring at the title etched on the door, Chief Technology Officer. 3 words that were supposed to feel like destiny but instead sat on me like a weight. Emails flooded in. Congratulations from investors. Schedules, contracts, logistics. Diana's terse welcome aboard. But my family? Silence. My brother sent one line. Proud of you, congrats. My sister texted. So you're rich now. Hope it was worth it. My father didn't call at all. And when I finally reached my mother, her voice was soft, cautious. You've always wanted to prove yourself, Sophia. I just hope you're not losing yourself in the process. Her words stung because I knew they were true. Working beside Victor now was a strange theater. On the surface, we were partners, co-founders, smiling for cameras, sharing stages, standing shoulder to shoulder. But beneath the polish, every glance was a duel, every handshake a threat. He no longer underestimated me, but he had not forgiven me. His eyes carried a cold fury, promising that this war between us was not over. Some nights, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, asking myself if I had simply traded one prison for another. Before I was invisible. Now I was visible, but every move was scrutinized, every slip could be fatal. Was that freedom or just another kind of cage? The loneliness was the worst part. People think betrayal isolates you in the moment it happens, but the truth is, the isolation lingers long after. Once you've been betrayed, you stop trusting not just others, but yourself. I second-guessed everything, even my instincts. I wondered if I was blind to another red flag, if another knife was already being sharpened behind my back. There were nights when I opened Precog's console just to watch it run integrity checks. Clean reports were the only reassurance I had. The only voice telling me that something in my life was still honest. I had built it to recognize betrayal, but sometimes I wished it could recognize loneliness too and tell me how to survive it. And then one evening I saw it, a flagged entry in the system logs, unauthorized internal access attempt. The credentials belonged to Victor. I stared at the glowing screen in the dark, my hands trembling. I wasn't surprised. I had known in my bones that betrayal wasn't a single act for him, it was a pattern, a hunger. Still seeing the proof in black and white made my stomach twist. He was still trying to override the system, still trying to erase me. The next morning I confronted him privately. His office smelled faintly of cologne and fear. He leaned back in his chair, calm, too calm. I know what you've been doing, I said softly. He smirked. You'll have to be more specific. You tried to override Precog's authorization protocols last night. You used your admin key, but the system flagged you anyway. You can't hide from it, it sees everything. For the first time, something flickered across his face. Fear. Raw, unguarded fear. But he buried it quickly, leaning forward, his smirk sharpening. And what will you do with that information? Run to the board. They're loyal to me, investors. They care about results, not politics. You think precog gives you power, but in this world, power is perception, and perception is mine. I studied him for a long moment before speaking. Perception can be manipulated. Truth cannot. That's the difference between us. You build illusions, I build systems. He laughed, bitter and humorless. Naive as ever. Systems can be hacked. People can be bought. You think you've won, but you're only one step ahead until the knife finds your back. I stood steady as stone. If you keep trying, Victor, that knife won't just cut me. It'll cut you, too. Because every move you make, every attempt you try, precog documents it. And one day it won't be me you'll have to answer to. It'll be the world. For a heartbeat, his mask slipped. Fear shone through again, unfiltered before rage smothered it. I left him sitting there, drowning in silence. That night, I stood at my apartment window, staring at the city lights. The skyline glowed like a heartbeat, and I let myself feel everything I had buried. The rage, the exhaustion, the hollow satisfaction of having beaten him at his own game, and beneath it all, grief. Grief for the pieces of myself I had lost along the way. For birthdays missed, friendships neglected, family bonds frayed beyond repair. For the girl, I used to be the girl who believed brilliance alone was enough. That girl was gone. In her place was someone harder, sharper, lonelier, someone forged in betrayal. And yet, as painful as it was, I realized something. Maybe this was what survival looked like. Maybe the price of being undeniable was becoming unrecognizable to yourself. Victor would never stop trying. Betrayal was his nature. But he would never win either. Because precog wasn't just a system anymore, it was a mirror. And every time he reached for the knife, it reflected his own hand back at him. Months slipped by like water through my hands. Precog grew beyond even my own expectations. It became sharper, more adaptive, almost frightening in its accuracy. Investors hailed it as revolutionary. Analysts wrote articles calling it the future of cybersecurity. And everywhere my name appeared beside it, Sophia Chin, co-founder and CTO. On paper, I had everything I thought I wanted. But success, I learned, casts long shadows. I still felt the weight of Victor's eyes in every boardroom, his smile stretched too tight, his voice too measured. He played the part of partner well, but I knew the truth. He had not forgiven me. He never would. And though precog exposed him again and again, though fear flickered in his eyes every time he realized the system had documented his betrayals, I knew he was waiting, waiting for my guard to slip, waiting for a new angle of attack. That was the thing about betrayal. It doesn't end with the act itself. It lingers. It coils itself around your life like smoke, seeping into every corner until you can't breathe without tasting it. I tried to celebrate the victories. The funding rounds, the articles, the interviews. I stood on stages and accepted applause, cameras flashing, lights burning hot on my face. But behind the smile there was always the hollowness. Because none of it gave me back what I had lost. My family kept their distance. My mother sent short texts, proud but cautious, as if afraid that every word might trigger an explosion I couldn't handle. My father's silence was the loudest judgment of all, and my siblings,